Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. I'm also the founder and head instructor of Conors Martial Arts here in Norwood. We will someday teach you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. It's May 29th, 2020. I think we're in phase one, Dan, of the
Yes,
lockdown.
we've just begun the phase one.
We're stepping in the
I
phase.
will say that for the first time ever, I got caught in traffic on the way here, so that must mean something.
People are out
First
there.
time
I
in a
noticed
while.
that, yeah.
There hasn't been traffic. You know, it was like a ghost town the first few weeks, so.
I went to the liquor store. It was pretty busy in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it has been busy most of the lockdown. Did I tell you the guy at the liquor store yelled at me for buying a large amount of booze? Did I tell you that?
That can't be a good
It's like my
business
local
model.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. He's like, what he specifically, I was just trying to make conversation.
Fill me in. What were you buying, Dan?
Well, a little of this, a little of that.
And then he yelled at
I had
you?
some whiskey, some tequila,
What did he
some
say?
vodka, some wine. You know, the staples. And I like what part of each food group, the alcohol pyramid. I think, there's an alcohol pyramid. I think you're supposed to, the advice.
It's controversial now. Apparently, one school of thought is tequila is more important than we had thought in the past.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Because, they made this original alcohol pyramid in the 50s, and they had different.
So what did he say to you?
So I was just making conversation, like, how's business? You affected? Something like, I didn't care. I was
Right.
just making, and he's like, well, we've been doing pretty good, but there's a problem. And he says, people like you come in and buy these big orders, and then the people that want to come in and just buy like one bottle of wine, there's nothing left for them. And I'm like, I'm standing there for a second. I'm like, what did you just say? You know what I mean? Like that stun, because I'm like barely paying attention. Then I'm like, are you criticizing? I was like, first of all, this is how much I always buy. I mean, like, this has nothing to do with hoarding. I realize this order looks like a hoarding order, but this is just what I buy whenever I come to the liquor store.
And
so
you said he's the owner,
yeah,
not a worker.
he might be.
Oh, okay.
He's somewhere. He might be an owner. He's sort of.
He's a little detached from
he's
the
the
whole
older guy that's
sales,
there.
expenses, the whole
Yeah,
concept.
he might be a guy that works there,
of the
but he
business.
might. He's either a senior guy that works there.
Now you come in, buy everything. Now I got to get more stuff and put it on the shelf.
Yeah,
It's very inconsiderate.
He's like people that come in and just want one bottle. Now it's out, and I'm like, can you just ring it up, please? You know what I mean? Just like conversation over. Just ring it up. Like I could put it all back. Will that help
It's not
you?
like you're buying cases of toilet paper.
Yeah,
You're
like, well,
just
yeah.
buying alcohol.
And
yeah.
also, it wasn't like weird. It wasn't like I'll take 800 bottles of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like just a little of this, little of that, and I was just sort of suddenly
That's
I'm
so
like,
weird,
am I
yeah.
getting scolded? Like I said, I felt like, you want me to put it all back? Will that help your business?
Do you think you'll take your business elsewhere in the future or
Nah.
not? Nah,
Probably not.
it's too close,
I've
too
already-
convenient.
I've already been back.
Oh man,
But yeah, things are getting maybe back to normal. I think I told you that for me, it feels like traffic's picking up.
yep.
We're near the end. And then I talk to certain friends and family that are like, where it's just beginning.
What's
You know,
just
they're
beginning?
Like this whole thing. They're like, this has been rough and we're just at the beginning. I'm
I
like,
don't even know what the
I'm
hell
like,
that
how do you
means.
figure we're just, I'm not sure they know either. I think it's maybe drama, melodrama. But also I asked, I'm like, what do you mean just at the beginning? I kind of thought we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
And then I've gotten a few different answers for that. But generally it's like, there are certain people out there, my parents, I have some friends that are like, I'm not coming out until
right.
until we are all vaccinated.
Right.
And so then I guess they're just at the beginning
Good luck
because
with that.
they
yeah.
mean next summer, right? At the earliest.
Yeah.
So it's sort
At
of
the earliest.
yeah.
Not even next summer.
So if you're not
End of next year.
if you're going to go into hiding until,
2022.
and I'm not making any judgment, I'm just saying if you are going to go into hiding until everyone's vaccinated, you are just at the beginning of this.
Yeah. I mean, I have compassion for anybody who's suffering from this or who's nervous about COVID-19, of course. But I did notice on social media there can be people out there who are sort of curating negative news. You know what I mean? Like every post is the worst spin possible. Another story about how, something doesn't work.
Young people are getting
Just
it.
really, and they're just really going out of their way to fill their social media feed up with as negative stuff as possible.
I have some people are friends and some people are not friends that are just appear on the.
I don't know if they
on the
think they're
feed
doing
anyway.
the community a service or something, but
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't think they really are. I don't get that. I don't understand that. I don't think there's any benefit in that curating the.
And I
negative
do
news.
understand if you are elderly or you have a heart condition or something like this, you might feel like you don't want to come out for a while. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, Dan. You got to take your own situation and really look at that. In Massachusetts, as of yesterday, there was something over 6,400 deaths. Under age 50, there were 87 deaths.
Right.
So if you're under 50, you have much, much less risk than if you're over 80, for example. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You know, you don't have to be a doctor.
You will always have less risk of death when you're under 50 and over 80.
But or over 70. So, I mean, you just got to assess your own particular situation. I think it's getting clearer, the real danger now, right?
The other thing is, I think there's all these cases out there, especially Massachusetts. There's a line of new cases that's been just dropping pretty consistently. That looks like, that line might not continue because we're reopening, but it looks like something around 18 days was when that line would hit 0.
Oh, is that it?
So it's sort of like, I think people might not feel it. If you can look at the data and say there are no new cases, I think everyone's going to feel a lot safer about coming out. When they're like, Massachusetts has no new cases, because we're
I wonder
actually,
when that'll be.
So-
You think that's realistic in the future, in the near future? I don't know.
I mean, it'll happen for us sooner than a lot of the country, because some of the country are still climbing.
Oh, I see.
But Massachusetts, unfortunately, we got hit very hard. But it also means we're ahead of a lot of the country. Like
I see.
we're much farther along the decline.
The number I keep looking at is hospitalizations and ICU beds occupied.
Everything's dropping.
They've been dropping, I think, for 4 weeks now,
Yeah.
for a full month. So, and they're well under capacity. So that's great news.
So I don't know if it hits 0, but again, if it gets really down there, you still look at numbers that say this many thousand new cases. If you start saying the whole state has a handful of new cases over the last week, I think everyone will start feeling like, okay, I'm not at that big a risk of something that's not really
right
out there now. So we'll see.
We'll see.
And then businesses, hopefully, will move on to phase 2 or.
I think right now we're in phase 3. I was just telling Dimitri, I think that earliest for us is June 29th. And we're coming up with sort of plans on how to do that. And I'm excited. As soon as we get the green light, I'm going to have as many classes as I can every day. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be great. Very excited about it. Reopening. And I got notes today, Dan. I'm prepared.
We've got
I got
jiu-jitsu advice.
Well, you know what I did notice. So Dimitri, Dan told me he likes it when we come up with jiu-jitsu advice that also applies to other parts of your life. And it seems to be a popular dynamic.
Yes.
Our audience
I think we
seems
do
to
it
like
a lot.
that. I think we do.
And just to be more specific, I think we don't do as much like very specific, like make sure your elbow is in when you do this move.
we
like
never do that, right?
That sort of advice.
Hardly ever.
It's sort of broader advice approaching jiu-jitsu, and sometimes a little more specific, but not to that detailed finite. Because I think also we've talked about it off air. The very detailed stuff should be. You need to show it. That's an in-person thing. Like
Kinda
talking
need to do
about
it
that.
too, right?
Yeah, and do it.
Yeah.
You need to show it and do it. Talking about that on a podcast is kind of silly, and also we don't want to do it, right?
I don't. Yeah. Bores me. I got to keep myself entertained. Yeah. Oh, so I read some more of The Fighter's Mind by Sam Sheridan. This has been just a terrific book. So the chapter I read this week, Dan, was on Greg Jackson of, what do they call that? Jackson Winklejohn
out in New Mexico.
Yeah, Albuquerque, right?
Yes,
Very
they've
interesting
had
guy.
many successful fighters.
John Jones fights out of there.
John Jones. It used to be Rashad. and Diego back in the day. They were
Oh,
like
right.
the first guys, right?
Yeah.
Holly Holmes out there.
Oh, right. Yep.
I think wasn't Cowboy out there for a little bit.
I think he was. Yeah.
So a lot, and a ton more.
Very
fighters.
cool. So here's what I got from there. I got some good stuff out of there. So he says, Greg Jackson says, mental toughness is learned. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like anything, not 100%. Some
Can
people
be.
are obviously going to be.
That's a good point.
Sort of
Everyone
gifted
has.
with it.
Yeah. Well, he was saying he knew guys who seemed to be tough guys, kind of rugged, tough guys, but they never explicitly worked on their toughness. So they plateaued and they never got tougher. And then sort of what they came into the world with, you know?
Right. You know what popped into my mind when you said it is that I feel like, I was actually just talking about this like an hour ago, that I feel like one of the things that's happened to me during quarantine is I lost mental toughness. Like, you know how like your conditioning can go down? I think your mental toughness, and I feel it running. So I've mentioned it on here, like I did a run where I stopped, and I've like almost never stopped on a run before.
Yeah.
And it hurt, and I just felt like, you know what? Let me just, I don't care.
Right?
Let me just walk. I'll walk the rest of the way. I'll listen to this music on my headphones. And I'm like, I never do that. And I just was like, that's pure lack of mental toughness, in my opinion. I mean, it really hurt to be running, but I was like, that's purely, it wasn't like I have to stop because I pulled something.
Right.
I was like, I'm getting soft. So I'm actually thinking I've got to focus on it when I'm running, like maybe make sure I get to a point where I'm very uncomfortable and keep it. I mean, that's just what I want to do. I'm not saying everyone wants to do that. And just like actually think I'm not running just to get back in shape. I want to get mentally tough again and work on it.
Dan, I think there's no such thing as stasis. You're either getting mentally tougher or mentally weaker. You're moving in one direction, you know?
But what's interesting is that most people don't talk about it as something that moves, right? They're sort of like either thinking of themselves or others. They're like, I'm a tough guy. He's tough. He's soft. She's tough. And people don't stay in that one spot always.
They don't. And it's circumstantial. You could exercise mental toughness in running, but you could be in a different situation and not feel as mentally tough. It's something less familiar to you or whatever, right?
Right. And I've also noticed, I think we've talked about it before, tough. I think one thing that happens too about training, jiu-jitsu training or MMA training or boxing or Muay Thai, you start reevaluating what tough means. And you realize like that's just a word that's a little slippery.
Yes.
Like, what does tough mean exactly? Yeah. Like I said, if you're someone could hit you with a brick and you're fine, but you stub your toe and you cry, are you tough? Or like you're sort of physically tough, maybe you're not mentally tough. Like, you know what I mean? There's these, and then you can twist those scenarios around of like, he's a guy that, you know, could take tremendous punishment, but he quits every workout. Like, so is he tough? You know?
Oh, right. Or if you have like a frozen amygdala and you don't have fear or you don't feel pain or something, you could have something wrong with your nervous system.
Yeah. What if you're not scared of anyone? You'll launch into a fight against Mike Tyson, but you just get immediately knocked down by, you know, like you're really bad, you're really weak. Like, is that guy tough or is he just stupid? Or tough's a slippery word a little bit, you know?
I think so. It's very individualistic now that you mention it, right? I think all of this stuff, I think it all ends up relating to goals, right? Because, you know, suffering can make you tougher. You know, you're suffering on your run, but it can't just be like mindless suffering without a goal, right?
Right.
Like even a crazy sort of religious zealot who wears a hair shirt, you know what I mean, to hurt them, they're doing it for some spiritual religious goal, you know what I mean? Like if you just suffer and it's not for some greater goal, it's not good. It doesn't help you, right?
Sure.
I don't even think it even makes you tougher, right? It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
There's no wisdom that comes from that. And like, yeah, so you're out there running and you must have asked yourself at some level, oh, why am I going through this misery right now? Screw it. I'll just walk, right?
Yeah.
But if you had a reason, you're like, well, I'm going to be racing next month and I don't want to look bad. You would have stuck through it.
Yeah. Or even like a a workout goal, like on a treadmill.
Yeah.
Like if I was on a treadmill and I was like, well, I'm not turning off the treadmill.
Right.
Or like, I want next week, I want it, each week I'm going a little farther, a little faster, and I want to get to that goal, then I'll suffer through it.
Yeah.
But I was just like running down the street, like, why don't I just walk it in from here?
Yeah.
That's
you need
what-
a
my
reason to suffer, right?
Yeah, my brain started telling me like, yeah, you're going the same distance, like you're headed home anyway. Just walk.
Fridge is full when you get home.
Yeah,
Who
walk
cares?
the rest of the way in.
Makes
Who
perfect
cares?
sense, actually. Why the hell were you out there running? Yeah, I mean, I was listening to Joe Rogan, and he's interviewing this guy who won some kind of wilderness contest. He was up in the, I don't know where the hell he was, up in the North Wilderness, and he lasted 77 days out in the wilderness with like a recurve bow, so a primitive bow and arrow and some tools and no food, and he lasted 77 days, and there were other people competing that couldn't last that long. And he said something that I've never experienced, but it seems like it's totally true, that when you're in that situation, then when you do something like, you kill some animal for your food, he said it's so satisfying. It's like you're so happy. Like if you're freaking hungry and you have no food and you shoot a rabbit, you're like, yeah.
Well, it'll give you a new view on hunger and hunting, where you're like, because none of us are ever really hungry.
Well, that's it. I think our nervous systems are probably still more aligned to that lifestyle of hunting, gathering, just being out there living on the edge, that when you're doing that, you just gain satisfaction with everything that you do. You fix your shelter so the water isn't leaking in, and you probably feel great about yourself and everything, because it's all getting down to survival. So it's just perfect,
yeah, and there's
right?
a real effect on your life and your comfort.
Right.
Like water was leaking on me.
Right. We
And now
live in such comfortable times that we
Yeah.
have to construct these things to feel good about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because you stopped running and walked home, and guess what? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
but
harder.
you get softer and softer, right? Like I can be up in
Probably,
rage
yeah.
because a neighbor's playing music, and I'm in perfect shelter, perfect
right.
temperature, house in a king size bed, and and I'll be like barely able to hear it, and like, like should I?
You're like the
just getting
princess
into-
and the pea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's you get softer and softer.
I think so. But the other point is, it's harder to find satisfaction in life
Right.
when you're further removed from that day-to-day survival.
And isn't this also an indirect appeal of jiu-jitsu, right? Or MMA, or the stand-up fighting is like giving yourself some hardship, getting yourself some sort of challenge, right?
Mm.
Taking away the softness of life.
Yeah.
I think you said that was one of the original reasons when you got into jiu-jitsu. You were like, you felt like, I'm sort of rewording, but you felt like this is too soft. I'm too soft right now.
Yeah, definitely.
You didn't say those words, but is that accurate?
I think, here's what I felt, Dan. I felt like I was losing touch with my true identity, and people were looking at me as like this paunchy businessman, and I'm like, that's not who I am, and this isn't good. And then I took a jiu-jitsu class, and somebody was trying to strangle me, and I was trying to strangle them, and I'm like, yeah, this is closer to my identity. This, I connected with that savage that was missing from my life. So yeah, interesting. So yeah, it gives me great satisfaction, and the jiu-jitsu for me, obviously, it is a toughness sort of regimen, right?
Right.
And I noticed. So I mentioned my son. I've been training, I think, 22 years now, and I feel like I'm always ebbing and flowing with my physical and mental toughness. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it's just my perception, but I feel like I got to work on it every day. I got to go in when I go to train. I got to put myself in uncomfortable positions and keep getting mentally tougher. And it gets sophisticated too. Like we talk about the ego trap on here all the time. You know what I mean? So it's not just enduring pain and physical discomfort. I think the harder part is like the whole kind of status game that's happening where you're losing esteem and gaining esteem. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's insidious.
Yeah. There are times when if the physical thing gets hard enough, then that's taking precedent to like panic attacks because you can't breathe. And I think a lot of people
Right.
listening right now are, because of the quarantine, having a break that they've never had before from jiu-jitsu, like longer and soft. People are going to come back softer than they've ever been. And
That's
a lot of
interesting.
people are going to have to get over a hump when they come back. People that are going to come back that have been off this whole time should get mentally ready that it's going to suck, right? Like it's going to hurt.
Can I speak to that? I would
Sure.
say this. I would advise everybody to just take an incremental approach. Like come in the first day with no expectations. Like, let's just see how I feel. Let's see how tough I am and how soft I am right now, and accept wherever you are. And then say,
Work from there.
yeah. And then the second day, I'm going to do a little bit more, be a little bit tougher than I was on day one, and so forth. Sort of incrementally move in the right
And
direction.
unlike a lot of breaks that I've taken or other people have taken, you're really not going to be alone on this one. You
No,
know, other times
right.
it's like you have an injury and everyone else is razor sharp and you're soft. This one, the whole class is coming in having taken a lot of
Right.
time off, you know. So
I think sometimes it's good just to have that attitude of not being too attached to outcomes. Like, I'm just going to go see what's happening, where I am. Like, maybe I can win this tournament. Maybe I can't win a match. But let's just go find out what the reality is, and then build on that. You know.
Yep.
Definitely. I was thinking about that. Where I think I actually wrote this in my notes somewhere here, Dan. That it seems like, well, Greg Jackson was talking about the fight is only 15 minutes, but the process is years long, he said. And I think you can even make the point that the process is a lifetime. It's as long as your lifetime, you know,
right.
your process. And then so it made me realize that suffering is almost always in the moment, right? It's either you're suffering now or you're suffering thinking about the very near future usually, right? And you're not suffering for the most part. I mean, there's extreme exceptions if somebody's ill or something, but we're not suffering over the years. You know what I mean? So I think of, I trained hard for 22 years in jiu-jitsu. It doesn't feel like suffering, but I could be in the moment in a bad position. Somebody's putting a lot of pressure on me. Maybe I have a lot of psychological stress on me, and I could feel extreme suffering. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's like,
But you don't
it's
look
more
at, you don't
immediate.
say I've suffered for 22 years doing jiu-jitsu.
no,
right?
somebody
It's-
might in some weird cases, some extreme cases, but for most of us listening to this podcast, our suffering is sort of like more immediate, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
And maybe if you have that point of view of like, oh yeah, this is kind of a momentary thing, it can help you deal with that, the stress of the suffering.
We've talked before about that. I think one of the worst physical moments in jiu-jitsu where you're getting smashed and you can't breathe. I'm not even sure everyone's had this, but like almost like that claustrophobic feeling
yeah.
where you see people like, this is when like new people tap out to side control or tap out to neon belly or something where you're just like, I can't, this guy's on me real tight
Right.
and I can't breathe and I can't
Yeah.
get out. You almost have like a panic attack.
Yeah.
It's a good example for what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you can think this is not going to last that
Right.
long. Like how
Yeah.
long is this really going to last? Probably less than a minute. Right.
Yeah. I told you that story where I was giving some huge guy a private lesson. It was like he's like 300 pounds and he wanted to learn about the mount. So he's mounted on me. He's holding as hard as he could. Big, strong guy. And I was trying to escape. And then I had that weird moment where I was like, oh, what if I can't get out? And I'm like, well, he's going to have to get up and go home sooner or later. So
Someday you will be out from
Some-
under this
some-
huge guy.
one of these days he's going to get up and get a sandwich or something.
Yeah, just get
So,
hungry.
Yeah. So I should be fine. I have 2 tips, Dan, for dealing with that immediate stress. 2 simple things. You want to hear them?
Sure.
Here's one that I must have known, but I haven't been practicing. So I saw some guy who's teaching yoga. I think I came across this stuff on Instagram. It's a very simple thing. So when our exhale is longer than our inhale, we turn on our parasympathetic nervous system, also known as our relaxation response. So our autonomic nervous system, which we can't control, autonomic meaning self-ruling, it rules itself, our breathing can influence it. So he was talking about stretching, and I've been doing it for stretching, and it's really works well. So he takes a 4 count in through his nose and then breathes an 8 count out through his mouth. And what happens is Dan, you can feel your body, the relaxation response turn on, and then your muscles just start to relax. And if you're triggering that relaxation response, that's a direct counter to, a feeling of panic, the opposite, stress response. And you know why you blow out your mouth instead of your nose?
No.
Because
I always assume more air could get out.
you can have less air come out.
Out of your mouth?
Yeah, because you can make the hole relatively. You have to if you just try to breathe. If you have a stress response, right, and if you go, okay, make your exhale twice as long as your inhale, you can't do it because your body's like breathing in too much.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you just gasping for breath?
Yeah,
some of these
but if you it's almost like you're whistling. Like you make your mouth pretty small aperture, and then you can just leak the air out. So it doesn't matter how much is coming out. If you just let it take twice as long, like that 8 seconds, man, that is a really effective trick. And it's so simple, right? That's a pretty good concept, right? So that's one. The other idea I heard, I think it was from this guy. His name's Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. I think I've seen him on podcasts and on Instagram, where if you have if you gaze at a horizon, it also triggers your relaxation response. So that's why when you go to see the ocean, you look out over the ocean, it makes you feel good. Or if you climb it, you like the mountains, you climb a mountain, you look out, you feel it's very soothing, right?
Yeah, I never know why though.
I think the theory is that, in Stone Age times, if you're looking out like on a savanna or something like this, you feel safe because you can see any predators. Yeah. Like no predators sneaking up on you. So you can kind of do that with your gaze. So in other words, when I'm very excited, the opposite happens. You get like that tunnel vision. So if you are feeling that, if you can kind of just soften your gaze so you can still look at your opponent or the ball or whatever the object is, but kind of soften it so you broaden your gaze. That also tends to trigger the relaxation response. Helps you get more in a flow.
Are you picturing for that I'm when I picture softening your gaze and jiu-jitsu roll, I almost picture it more your mindset, like your awareness.
I think so. I think
broadening the awareness of okay, here's the gym, instead of like this panicky, I'm being smashed, just sort of become like I'm in this gym. There's people rolling around me.
I think that would be a good one. The other thing, say if we're sparring kickboxing, if I'm like focused on a different parts of your body, looking all around, if I want to calm down, I can just like kind of gaze at your chest and soften my gaze and try to take in all your limbs, and that's going to relax you, I think, as well. And then for jiu-jitsu, if you close your eyes, I find that you're removing one of the sensory inputs. That tends to relax me as well. I don't know, have you ever done that? Close your eyes when you're doing jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I don't even know why exactly sometimes during
I think it
rolls.
heightens your sensitivity. So you're relying more on the feel and the balance and the relative positions of the bodies. I find it pretty relaxing, yeah.
And then stand-up, you're always supposed to look at the chest, right? I mean, I don't always follow that advice, but I've been told it a million times.
If you're kickboxing, you kind of have to. I think you can do that, but you can occasionally look at their face and get some information from their expression or their eyes, like how they're feeling, what are they looking at maybe. So, I think both of those are probably the way to go, yeah.
Yeah, I heard two things. One is looking at the chest is, I think it gives you this, it allows you to see, both the hands and the feet and the knees and whatever might be coming at you in that sort of holistic way. Like, what is this person going to throw at me?
Yeah.
And then I heard something else of like, if someone's giving you the crazy eyes or like giving you the aggressive look, like it's like Fedor who'd never meet someone's eye in this, in the, in any sort of stare down right before a fight or weigh-ins, or you see fighters do that where they're like, I don't want to even get into this game of like staring at someone.
Well, we're social animals. So if you engage in that intense stare back and forth, it might create a stress response in you. It might get you more excited than you want to be, right? So
it seems sort of related to all these points we're sort of bringing up. I remember, and I've never heard this before, but it was Mike Campanella told me that, and Mike,
shout out to Mike.
He would box and he did MMA fights. He's done jiu-jitsu in front of big crowds. He was a competitor. And in the midst of when he was competing all the time, he said that he likes sometimes like if he shows up, I think he was talking about practice, but he was talking about if he forgot to wear his contact lenses.
Okay.
He's like, I really like it. He's like, I can't really see anything. You know, he's like, everyone's kind of this blob or blur. And he was just saying it really relaxes me. Like,
There you go.
I can't, you know what I mean? Everyone becomes, he's like, obviously he could see well enough to see sort of punches coming or kicks coming or be able to do jujitsu. But I was interpreted it along the lines of what we're saying. Like he liked everything sort of blurred out. Like he's not, it like would erase like the interpersonal interaction or sort of erase like the other person's expression or what the other person is feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure we're programmed. We're such social animals that if you're looking at me, I have to start interpreting. What does that look mean? Why is he looking at me that way? And that's a distraction.
Yeah,
from
if you
what
could just
you're doing.
blur it out.
Yeah,
You can just focus on. You're like, I just have this opponent. It sort of helps you focus on the mechanics of it.
Definitely.
Instead of any sort of interpersonal nonsense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very cool. So one of the things Greg Jackson was talking about, and I've done this myself in my training and competition, and I've seen it, is they said they would have this ethos at Jackson's of never accepting the takedown. So the guy takes you down, and you're like, oh, hell no. I'm bouncing right back up, and you're going to have to take me down and hold me down, and I'm just not going to concede the takedown at all. And that's surprisingly effective, Dan. It's like an attitude. Like it ends up expressing itself in a lot of effective sort of behaviors and things that you're doing while you're wrestling. But that's where it starts for sure.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it at the highest levels in the UFC, and I experienced it myself where someone new comes in, but they have a wrestling background.
Mm-hmm.
And then you really notice that jiu-jitsu has, because you play all the positions, so you just go to your guard. And I'd notice, like this one person in particular, I remember that I'd sort of take him down or get a position, and he'd spring out of it, and I'd feel like, what the hell? Like, like, you know what I mean? Like,
it can discourage you, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh man, he's out.
Yeah.
And then but I realized like that I wasn't making sure that he wouldn't do that.
Right.
Like, do you know what I mean? Because then, he did it twice. And then from there, I'm like really clamping on him. And I'm sure that quick clamping is what I should be doing all the time, and so it helps you learn. But
actually, I think now, especially no-gi jiu-jitsu, then you basically have to be advancing to the mount or back mount all the time. Like if you take somebody down, you can't just take them down and hold on to them. It's like you got to take them down. If they turtle up, you got to get their back and then start to choke them. You know what I mean? Like probably back control is the only position where you can start to stabilize yourself. And, you get a static, maybe you put a body triangle on them and now you can go to work. But I noticed that Rory's particularly good at that. It's like if I take him down now, it's just started. It's 10% of the job. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to get back up, run away from you, break your grips. It's very effective. Yeah. And,
and like you said, it could be discouraging, right? You can get a takedown.
Discouraging.
Especially if it's difficult to get the takedown, and then you're like, and now they're up.
Now they're up.
Yeah.
I just invested all that energy, and now they're up. So that's another way you got to train yourself to just be relentless. Like you don't get discouraged by investing energy and not getting the immediate outcome you want. When I first competed in 2000, 20 years ago, as a blue belt, Dan, at the Pan Ams, that was the big thing I noticed is that people would not accept the pass. I was used to, I think in the academy, you try to work your guard, somebody starts passing you, you try to defend, and then you're like, okay, now I'm in bottom side control. And then I saw at that competition, people never accepted it. And they would just hold on to like a pant by a thread and then get back up and then get their guard back. So then,
right. And it's the nature of a competition, right? Because you give up points.
Get 3 points for the pass. So, and it was amazingly effective. And sometimes they would end up winning just because they stopped that pass, or the guy would get discouraged because he almost passed and he didn't get to finish it.
So you think not accepting a takedown or a pass, it seems like people should be doing that in practice as well, right? To get it.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing it, be aware, like I'm not doing it because you're going against someone maybe they're much lower level than you, or you want to practice a certain, you
Yeah.
want to practice an escape,
Right.
but it should be a conscious decision. Like, I'm going to not fight as hard
Right.
as I should.
Right.
And the rest of the time you should.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to have that attitude. Nobody can take me down. So if I have that attitude, man, what an advantage that is. It's going to make it way harder for the other guy. Because he's going to have to really take me down and secure me. Or he's going to have to pull guard. Then I'll be on top. So, yeah.
And I would think it's actually developing in the UFC, because it used to be very obvious
Definitely,
10,
right?
15 years ago, where the wrestlers would just fight their way. They would not ever be on their back.
Right.
And jiu-jitsu guys would be.
Right.
And now I think there's less and less, because jiu-jitsu guys, it used to be easier to threaten from your back, threatening triangles.
Getting
and
hard now,
armbars.
right?
Yeah, it exists, but it's much harder.
It's
So
much
I
harder.
think it doesn't pay off now at the UFC level to fight off your back.
Not so much.
There's exceptions, of course.
There's
but
exceptions, but there are exceptions, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people would rather invest their energy to get back up to their feet, especially when the cage is there. So now, you have some stability in one plane of where you're fighting, where they can't take you in that direction. So
what's the specifics of, because I noticed there's a funny thing where it's like, if you're taken down, it's like the coach is like, get to the fence, so get to the fence so you can get up.
Yeah.
But then you see other people that get the takedown and drag the guy over to the fence. And it's like, well, who's got the, like, why are you
Here's what
both
I
trying
think,
to
Dan.
get to the fence? Like,
I think
it's got to be helpful for one of you, not both of you.
I think this day and age, you probably shouldn't drive the guy to the fence. You know what I mean? But if the guy had like a very effective rubber guard where he's going to high guard you and you're worried about getting caught up in that, you may want to bring him to the cage so you can put your head on the cage, and now you eliminate some of those attacks. But I think you're better off staying away from the cage, definitely. I wouldn't push the guy to the cage.
Khabib keeps people against the cage a lot, right? Like,
He does. Yeah, he's very
do you think
effective.
he wouldn't prefer it, though, or you think he's just used to it and so he likes it there?
That's a good point, Dan. I think he's mastered that position. Well, somebody's going to crack the code on him one of these days, right? That's how it always is. There's somebody who seems invincible. Somebody comes along with a slightly different strategy and a couple new tactics, and all of a sudden they take away a big advantage. So that's got to happen to Khabib at one of these points, right? Because you can see what he's doing. Like, he evolves. He does things slightly different than he used to, but you can see what he's doing. So I would think people would start being able to train to make it much harder for him to do it. I don't know.
Yeah. I actually thought Conor had trained intelligently how to defend. He just couldn't do it for an extended period of time. And then he got
I agree,
caught
Dan.
with
He
a
actually did a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Here's-
Given that he's not an NCAA wrestler, and,
I saw two main mistakes, Dan. The first one was in the very first exchange, the very first takedown. He did a good job of defending it, and for a split second, he got complacent. You know what I mean? For a split second, he was like, "Oh, I got the sprawl going. I got this." And in that split second, Khabib adjusted, and all of a sudden, he was behind. Where I think if he had more urgency, almost like more fear,
just ferociously get at it, like an animal in a trap. Like, I'm not going to sit here.
Like if he's fighting an alligator, I just got to get the hell out. I think that would have served him. Then he was doing something that I like to do against the cage. He did a really good job of positioning his arm inside, and not so much the underhook that you traditionally get. He's putting his arm across the body into the other arm, like a shallow underhook on the other side, which makes it hard for the guy to control your body. You know what I mean? It's effective position, and he was doing that for most of the fight, and then he was doing it in the last round, and then for some reason he took his arm out, and once he took it out, that's when Khabib took his back. So you can't really take your back because you have like this. I call it a Spartan shield. I got this. We're doing the thing that we said we don't do. Yeah. This is between him and me, so I got this barrier between us, and as long as I keep that, I can even show him my back a little bit, and it's going to be hard for him to get it. So he was doing that for most of the match, and for whatever reason, it was at the fourth round. I don't know if he got tired or something. He was kind of stuck. It's like, it's not a guarantee you're going to get out, but it stops you from getting deeper into the mud. You know what I mean? And then
maybe that's it. He thought he could get out,
and he took it out, and that was a mistake. That was a technical mistake there, tactical mistake, and then that was the wrap. Then it was a wrap. I can't wait to watch both of those guys fight again.
There's news going around right now, just McGregor news. Is like the Yahoo news and everything. It's like McGregor agrees to fight Anderson Silva.
I saw that,
I'm
yeah.
like, what are you talking about? Like,
Dana will never do that. Yeah.
as two guys that I've been in the same room as, like the size difference.
Oh, it's tremendous.
You
Yeah.
they can't fight.
No.
They can't, you know what I mean?
Plus,
like,
Anderson
the size difference is
listed
ridiculous.
as age
Yeah.
45 now.
Yeah.
So he's getting up there. But he is a much bigger guy, longer guy. I think that would be a tough match for Conor, but I don't know if the age has caught up to Anderson. He seems a little
it
chinny,
might be,
too.
Yeah.
But
it might have, but it seems
I think
like
there's zero upside for the UFC because what if Anderson wins? Now they've ruined this box office guy,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make any sense.
it seems more like it's also kind of like a carnival fight or something. You know what I mean? Like this, like
think
massively
Anderson is-
different size and a guy who's old and
Everybody
just-
wants to fight Conor. It's a big payday.
Yeah.
Why not, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're bigger than him, You don't see any 45-pounders saying they want to fight him, right? I guess he couldn't do that anymore anyways. But
Right. I think Anderson said he wanted to fight him at 176.
yeah.
I'm like,
So-
how'd you pick 176? He was probably like, that is the farthest I could possibly drop down and try to get Conor to fight me.
I don't even know
Because-
if he could make it, right?
Yeah.
He'd probably show up 4 pounds heavy or something, right? Yeah, that's not happening, I don't think. I
don't want it to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What do you think about Mike Tyson fighting?
Yeah.
I don't want to see that either. Everyone keeps
Not really.
talking about that.
Not really. I guess the most interesting fight to me is a peer, right? Like someone from like Holyfield or just someone about his age.
Holyfield has owned him too much in those 2 fights, right? I don't know.
I think he'd lose again.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd want to do it either. Because I've heard him talk about fighting. I've heard a lot of Mike Tyson interviews, and I think he named Holyfield as someone that was extremely punishing to fight. He said, I'd come in and he'd counterpunch me really hard every time. So I
Yeah.
doubt he's interested in that
I
fight.
think he out Tyson. Like
Yeah.
Tyson would put his head in your face and punch you. And
Yeah,
Holyfield
we
just
talked a
did it
little
more.
bit
Yeah.
last time or a couple podcasts ago about the Tyson, all this smoke about the Tyson comeback. And I mean, come on. It was like it showed him looking ferocious, hitting these pads. And it
Did
was
look
like,
good hitting those
yeah, he
pads.
looked ferocious, but it's
Yeah.
like 5 seconds of hitting pads.
Yeah.
Like I said, 15 years ago, he was losing decisively.
What do you think
to
about him
journeyman.
against Tito Ortiz?
Oh, yeah, that's ridiculous, too. I think he could beat Tito. Again, it's a boxing match.
If they box, that'd be kind of weird to watch, exciting. I don't
Another
know.
name I heard was Vanderlei Silva.
Oh, yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
I think because Tito's not even a.
Tito's
so I guess
45
I think
years old.
Tyson, by
too,
the
man.
way, could beat these guys, including Vanderlei. Like they're not boxers.
They're not boxers.
People don't realize how well Conor did, and that it's a guy. You
was two
can't
things.
just go from never boxing
Yeah.
to fighting Mike Tyson, even if he's 53.
Yeah. I think Conor is exceptional striker, and I also think Mayweather chose the strategy of like, let's just get this guy tired. Just let him punch me and hang on him, and once he gets tired, we'll take him out.
I agree. I also think Conor did well. I don't agree with the
Yeah.
people that are like Mayweather carried him to the 10th round, and it's like
No.
he didn't carry him.
He didn't carry
he
him.
used, like
No.
you said, he used defensive strategy.
Yeah.
I don't think Mayweather was ever in danger, but I think
No,
he was
but
always
Conor won some
he
rounds.
was always going to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was.
It was much
You
closer
can't just
than
go in
anybody
and
could
fight
expect,
and
yeah.
box.
No.
It's like again, Tyson can't go in and do MMA,
No.
and neither could Floyd.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay.
So I'm not that interested, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's like so. Then I heard another name was like some journeyman boxer, was like, has that 18-11 record. And it's like, well, why then? Why,
Oh, right.
Why do we want to see Tyson do
Fight some
this?
journeyman. Yeah, I don't want to. Definitely don't want to see that.
And I think the Tito and the Vanderlei propositions wasn't it bare knuckle boxing?
Oh, was it?
So that also has that circus atmosphere around it a little bit to be like
Does, yeah.
Tyson's 53 and gonna come fight, and it's like, is it gonna be in a barn? You know what I mean? Like, it's like that bare knuckle. It's like, why is he fighting bare knuckle? He's like a iconic champ. Like now he's doing a bare knuckle fight against Tito Ortiz. Like I'm not into it. Would I watch it? Of course, yeah. Of course I'd watch it, but not pay-per-view.
Definitely. Okay, the next one here, Dan. I don't know if I agreed with this. So he said they like to try to avoid
This is Greg Jackson?
Greg Jackson, avoid the emotional roller coaster, and they want to keep gradually and steadily increasing their emotional state, no matter how the match is going. I'm like, how is that feasible? That I didn't really understand what he was getting at there. It's like you don't want to have highs when you're doing well and lows when you're not doing well. You just want to gradually start feeling better and better no matter how you're doing. And I'm like, if you could do that.
It seems too specific. I'm with you. I agree with the first part. Like, try not to get too discouraged or too up. But then that part about increasing your emotional state seems a bit.
Yeah.
I would subtract that. You know, I'm not exactly in a position to give advice to Greg Jackson, but
I agree. Yeah.
That's just what I feel like.
Maybe if that's their intention, they just end up having more emotionally stable performances. So that might be good. I don't know. Here's something I thought was interesting. They would train their squeeze while maintaining their breathing and their emotional control. So it's like if you squeeze and you hold your breath, you get fried pretty quickly and you get tired pretty quickly. I thought it was interesting that they also somehow stressed emotional control. I don't know how they practice that.
So what's the idea of is it a way of avoiding gassing out, or is it purely emotional?
Gassing out. But they're thinking if you're overly emotional, that drains you of physical energy as well, which is probably true, right? Know what I started doing? I noticed that when I would do like a lift, like a mat return, like if I'm rolling with my son and I'm standing up behind him and I lift him up and throw him back down. Sometimes, or we do some kind of takedowns, like a double leg. If I lift, you kind of tend to hold your breath when you're lifting a person off the ground. You know what I mean? Because it probably makes sense. You're getting some stability in your core when you hold your breath. But I realized I wasn't getting back to normal breathing right away sometimes. So what I started to do, Dan, is as soon as I put him on, slam him down on the mat, I would exhale so I could get back into my regular breathing.
Yeah.
Seems like a good tip, right?
Yeah. And again, it's the broadest level here is, again, breathing, which is something that a lot of people don't pay any attention to.
Right.
It can help, I think, in a lot. Just today we've mentioned 3 different ways of breathing, where it comes into play. And it's one of those things that's jiu-jitsu advice and applies outside of jiu-jitsu.
I think so. I keep thinking, Dan, about that whole idea of the cat and the mouse we talked about last week, where in that tension, the cat keeps his serenity and the mouse is getting drained. His life is on the line, especially if it's a house cat. He's either going to eat the mouse, torture the mouse,
if anyone didn't listen,
or he's going to go eat the bowl of food. You know what I mean?
The idea is they're both in a high state of tension, you could call it.
Yes,
But
they're
the
both
mouse
sort of frozen
is
in space. So their bodies aren't moving, but the mouse is getting exhausted, and the cat is perfectly serene.
Right. And in jiu-jitsu, we probably err toward the mouse sort of tension, like where you're getting drained.
You don't want to, yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone feels it in the early days of training stand-up, where you're like, oh boy, someone's trying to punch me in the face. For most of us, it's an unusual situation. Yeah. And you're like, why am I so exhausted? You're just sort of, you do 2 rounds and your arms hurt. And you're sort of like, I'd almost rather get hit in the face and have to hold my hands up here anymore. Like, you're so tired. And I think it's that sort of, you've been the mouse. You've been the mouse. You've been too scared. And
it's really not your physical conditioning at all. It's just like, that emotional tension, the physical tension you're carrying in your body, right?
Right. And for most of us, again, definitely in training, not only is it better for you to have the cat tension, it's the more appropriate sort of tension. Your life's not on the line. You know what I mean? True. We're not fighting we're not going to get eaten by a cat. Like,
you can go eat a bowl of kibble after training.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So that's,
I thought the word serenity is interesting in this case, because Wade Skin was talking about trying to practice that in life. So you're going down the street, somebody cuts you off, whatever the little stresses we have in our life, is to practice having that almost cat-like serenity. When I used to think of the word serenity, Dan, I would think about like an overworked business executive who's stressed out, and they got to go on a yoga retreat or go to a Caribbean island and chill out, and they're like some serenity so they can have a momentary break, and then they go right back into the rat race. Right. Where this is like, no, this is a lifestyle where I'm going to be carrying my serenity in the tension,
Right. I think that's a great idea too. Like, practice it. Don't go to the Caribbean to practice it. Like, practice it during a work meeting, a stressful work meeting.
Right.
Or you said the example, because I was someone terrible with that. Like, someone would cut me off in traffic, and I drive for 20 minutes imagining different scenarios of dragging him out of the driver's seat, or you know what I mean, or running him off the road, or just different versions of throttling them, or and I came to this realization a while ago now, where it's just like, that is not healthy, right? Like, what does that accomplish? Like, not feeling good,
not serving you.
Yeah.
What I do is, if somebody says something rude to me, I just imagine the most rude, vile, hateful thing I could say to them. Not that bad, but you get what I mean. And then I'm like, why am I spending my mental energy, my intellect, to think up a horrible thing to say to somebody? It's not serving me at all,
Yeah, especially if you're not even gonna. I did that. I used to do that on Facebook too, where someone would say something I didn't know. I was like, what if I just wrote like this, like out of the blue, incredibly blistering, rude remark that just left everyone I know shocked. Like, what did he say?
Yeah.
Like personal and just like.
Yeah, to the point.
Yeah. So I have those evil. I didn't do it, but But to your point, it's like, it's always better. Clear this stuff out of your brain, right? It's not.
Doesn't serve you at all, right? Definitely doesn't serve me, man. So the other thing, I already talked about this, where I think Greg Jackson talked about it, or maybe I was just thinking about it, is that, I think he did. He had some kind of Celtic sort of adage in here. I forget what it was, but it's something to the effect that suffering and reflection. So I think it was something like see, study, suffer, gain wisdom. You know what I mean? So you're seeing things in life, you're suffering, you're dealing with things in your life that cause you to suffer, but then you reflect on them and you gain wisdom. But you also seem to need a goal, to be in the pursuit of a goal, to have that, or it's just suffering.
Yeah. I should also say, when you're suffering, and I could just do a simple level like running fast in the heat, it's hard to deal with it mentally. Like, it's hard to just be like, what I need to do now is use this as an opportunity to strengthen my, you're like, it just hurts. It's very hard to focus. But I think that's when you want to try to focus on it, And I think just emotional suffering, whatever, you get fired from your job, a bad breakup. It's hard then to reflect, because it's hard to reflect when things hurt. Yeah. It's sort of like, you know what I mean? A bad breakup. It's like, you know what? Why don't you learn from this? You're like, I don't want to learn from this. Like,
shut up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in a bad mood. But
that's
so it's worth acknowledging that. It's hard. That's when you have to really, but that's also why we're bringing it up. Like, you have to, your instinct is going to be to not reflect because you don't want to. It's an effort that you don't feel like making.
I think that's the purpose for grief, or a large purpose is to reflect. So, but the amount of reflection you're doing and the quality, it probably matters. So
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I would think the purpose of grief, but it's like a very basic level, like learn to avoid these things. It's your body signal. But you might want to get more detail out of it by reflecting on it more closely, like more.
Maybe, or I'm starting to think, Dan, you should try to get 90% of the lesson learned and then move on as fast as possible. Like, sometimes people, I think, dwell in this stuff and they're not learning anything. You know what I mean? They're just experiencing the pain and the suffering.
That's a good point too. But that also, the deliberate reflection will help that happen, right? Yeah. You're like, you can approach this like, what do I need to learn from this? Learn it and move on. That doesn't really apply. Like, so that's for emotional kinds of things, I think, or
definitely. Yeah.
It's not going to help me. Not going to help me running.
I don't think so. The only thing that can help you
run.
The running is if you have a really good reason.
It's
to
like,
be
let's
out there.
think about, why does this hurt? It's like, because I'm running up a hill and it's hot. I got it. I don't need to reflect that much.
I told you I was doing those 90-second hill runs. I think at the end of 2018, Dan, it's the most awful thing I've ever done in my life. And I would argue with myself on the way there to the place that I would do them. It was torturous, misery. And then I had to trick myself. I said, I'm only going to do one of them. And then I'd say, all right, I'll do one more. I almost became a split personality.
What I was saying with people for running, it's hard to resist. My brain, when I get really tired, my brain starts sending signals like, stop. You know what I mean? Like, it basically, I feel like, just stop. And like, I can sort of picture my body like just having that peaceful slowing down and stopping. Like,
because so
it's
much
like
of
my
our
brain
life
is going, stop.
Right.
It's really hard to keep running through it.
It's because it's completely unnatural. Like
Yeah.
if you're in nature, you wouldn't be just out running. You'd either be chasing some food or something would be chasing you as food.
Right.
And then you wouldn't be going, stop. You'd be
Yeah.
like, feet don't fail me now, right? Just keep frickin' going, right? Yeah. It's we live in strange times, right? We're in an environment not suited
unnatural,
to
right?
our
Yeah.
nervous systems. Yeah. Well, then that's pretty much all the notes I think I have. I don't know.
We're good.
This was a pretty meaty episode, I think. What do you think? Got a
Yeah,
lot good
lots of stuff.
Not a lot of fluff in this one.
And a perfect example of jiu-jitsu advice that applies outside of
outside.
outside of jiu-jitsu.
The only challenge I'm going to have is coming up with a good title for this, and we covered a lot of good stuff.
Make sure you eat kibble after you roll. I think was one of the main points.
The main one. People are going to think I have the cat parasite. I keep talking about cats so much, but I love them. All right, man. Do we have any super fans we want to reach out to? I don't know. I think we're getting a lot of listens. I think our audience is growing, so that's good. And I can't wait to get the Academy back open.
Absolutely.
All right, so everyone subscribe to the YouTube channel if they haven't yet, and we'll see you next week.